Our guest today is David Couper. David is a career coach, consultant, and writer who for the last 20 years has worked in Europe, Asia, and in the United States with major organizations including the BBC, BT Television, Mattel, Sony, and Warner Brothers. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for being on. You have some very interesting things that I'd like to discuss with you. With the current economy, don't we have to take any job we can get? Outsiders just have to fit in. There's no choice. Is that right?
Well, a lot of people would agree with you, but I disagree because I think right now, if you are an outsider, you need to really capitalize on what makes you stand out. So one of my coaching clients got a job where he stressed what made him unique. He worked in Europe, knew some special technology, and he's earning about $500,000. And he got that money just because he stood out and made himself different.
Well, I definitely agree with that. We all have our unique traits. We just have to find them.
Exactly, yeah.
So why outsiders? What made you write this book?
Good question. So I'm from the UK. When I was working for a company there, I was actually asked to leave because of my career-limiting tie. And I thought my boss was joking, but actually he wasn't joking. And it was just kind of a symbol that I didn't really fit in with what was going on there. And a couple of years later, I got asked to work for the same company, but in Chicago. And it worked out very well. I was being paid more money, and I won a couple of awards. And my new boss one day said, "Oh, I like your socks. They were bright red, and not particularly corporate." And I just realized something was different. And what I also found was working with my own clients that by stressing what made you unique, finding the people who wanted that uniqueness, you could actually have a winning career. And that's why I wrote my book, which came out in August.
That sounds like a great book. I love the Red Sox scenario that you had with them. Well, who will this book help?
Well, actually, it's interesting. I just had a review on Amazon where one of the reviewers said he thought it would help not just people looking for a job, but people in their life looking for, maybe a little frustrated, confused about where their place is and how they can accept who they are and celebrate what makes them different and have a better life. But generally, I think anybody from people starting out, leaving college, a lot of Generation Y feel like outsiders when they interview. They don't get some of the people they're talking to, or even seniors who are forced to go back to work because of their money situation, who may feel like they're not up to date or out of the mainstream in the workplace. So I think my book, Outsiders on the Inside, can really help all kinds of different people who feel a little frustrated and stuck in finding a job or want to move on in their career and don't know how to do that.
Well, perhaps your book will give people courage and the confidence to find their own uniqueness.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what happened to me, and that's what's happened to a lot of my clients. And it really makes me happy when people follow their dream, follow their passion, whether it's somebody who was very frustrated as a project manager and wanted to move into advertising. He was also an extreme cyclist, and he used that experience of racing and raising money for charity to segue into a job in advertising where he was raising money. And he has a job he really loves. He's making more money. And it's also happened with someone who was a frustrated artist, and she took the courageous leap to follow her dream. She's not making as much money, but she's so much happier.
Definitely. I think the courage to do what you love to do is the most important thing. Well, speaking as a senior, there are more of us in the marketplace right now than ever before. What can you tell us about seniors and your book?
Right. So, well, I turned 50 this year, so according to AICI, I guess I'm almost a senior too. So, it's a good question, Dr. Joyce. So I think there's a couple of things. One, that you need to really ensure that when interviewers are interviewing, where employers are looking for people, I think it's three things they're looking for. One is that you can do the job. One is that you're going to fit in with the culture. And one is that you're going to not cause any problems. And when I say cause any problems, like being sued or you're going to steal things, those kinds of stuff. And I think with seniors, it's really making sure that they know you can do the job, that you have the skills and knowledge, that you're going to fit in. And when fitting in can be, can you use some of the technology which is being used? So I advise clients to talk about, have a Twitter account, have a Facebook account, make sure that they have a BlackBerry, things like that, just small things which kind of reassure the employer. And then also, I think if you bring something unique, different to the table, I work with a barbecue retailer in California, and one of the salespeople was probably a senior. He was probably getting into his 60s, but when he talked about barbecuing, it was smacking my lips. It was so delicious, and he really could. He barbecued for years and years, and he could sell a barbecue to anybody. So we were really kind of bringing that uniqueness. He just loved what he was doing.
And that's the most important thing. I'm just not sure why seniors say, I'm too old when you ask them about the social sites. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. I think the last time I looked, I had 38,000 followers on Twitter. And it's opened up so many doors and so many opportunities for me that besides the other facets of my business has just made it explode. So I don't understand why people, are they afraid, you think, to get involved because they grew up with black and white TVs and they don't really know about all this new technology?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes fear, or we get stuck in the routine. I mean, I know I'm on Twitter, I'm on those kinds of social networking, but I know when my bank changes the prompt, online bank, or even at ATM, the cash machine, I get a little worried, nervous. So I think maybe it's normal, but it's really just taking that risk. And there are tons of seniors, not just on social networking, but playing computer games and really being out there. And it's vital to do that these days.
Well, you've got to stay with the times, and it also keeps your mind active so you'll live longer. If only they would put it in that vernacular, I think that they would really understand it better. Does this book apply to college graduates as well as to someone already in the market? Lots of parents are finding their kids moving back home.
Yeah. So if you have a kid on the sofa,
that's where they are. That's right.
Yes, you may want to help them move through the process. And I think that it's a couple of things. One is that there's a big gap between what Generation Y expects and wants and Generation X, and then I think baby boomers even more so. So there's kind of a different view of what work should be, and you have to kind of compromise it all. So I've heard horror stories where graduates will go in and immediately start talking about vacation, or one where their parents came along to negotiate the salary. That's just
because they didn't know how. That's probably why.
Yeah. But I think, and I quote a couple of examples in my book, that the college graduates Generation Y, extremely tech savvy, think about the world, think about what's important in terms of green energy, things like that, and they're very good at multitasking, so they can bring a huge amount to a company. So it's really positioning themselves for the positives and the negatives, like you're going to want a lot of vacation, those kind of things that you really downplay in the interview and hiring process, but really focus on the important things you can give. Gave a couple of examples where people were shocked how quickly this generation could pick things up and really make a huge difference if they were given the chance. So I think it's really stressing what you can do, not what you want from the interview.
I agree with that. There actually is a me generation that didn't fit in with the X or the Y, and they kind of fell between the cracks. They weren't kind of in school with computers, and yet they're very, very intelligent, but they just have given up with trying to do anything because everything's computers now. It's all about me. It's a kind of an interesting phenomena, but definitely there is a generation that was missed. And I think that that's really sad because it does seem like we're turning around, like the Y generation with the college students coming out of college. I think that those people were very lucky because they were born with computers in their lap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they all had computers. But if you missed that, then you didn't have that, and then it became something new you had to learn, and it's never the same. For example, someone that works for me that had a computer put on her lap when she was 2 years old.
Yeah. And that's pretty
so
common.
She knows computers inside and out, because of that.
Exactly.
I want to know what steps are there for someone to go from being an outsider to an insider.
Okay, so just briefly, Dr. Joyce, how I see it is that, first of all, it's acknowledging that you are an outsider, making sure that you don't feel like making sure that you own who you really are. So I talked before about the person who was the artist. She for a long time, she tried to force herself into another job. and she wouldn't admit who she was. There are lots of successful outsiders, from Donald Trump. Richard Branson has a learning disability. When I understand, he didn't even graduate from high school, so he's done pretty well. And so
I would say that.
yeah. And then it's really a process where you look at what makes you different. It could be your hobbies. It could be something you do in work. It could be how you relate to people. And then accepting that's okay and analyzing how you can sell that particular skill, that particular difference. It could be something that I worked with a literary agent in Los Angeles who didn't like the kind of the business side of what she was doing, where she felt like her clients were just numbers, how much money they could bring into the agency rather than they were real people. And what she did was she actually moved into running her own business, where she's consulting, where the relationship is really what's key. It's not just about the numbers, it's the relationship. So she leverages her relationships with her clients. She's much happier. So she worked out what she could sell. And then work through the job hunting process, and I go step by step in my book about how to do that, focusing on what makes you different and putting that in a positive light rather than a negative light. And then finally, not letting yourself get derailed. It's hard times right now. I was talking to somebody last week who she's been unemployed for 2 years. It's hard to keep the morale going, but you can't let yourself be derailed. You have to keep on trying different things. If one thing's not working, try something else.
I couldn't agree more. I'm actually a great example of this question because from having a fever as a baby, I lost my eyesight. And yet I've accomplished everything I've set out to accomplish. I don't let the turkeys or the economy get me down. I always, the saying, don't let the turkeys get you down. Well, I don't let anything get me down because I believe there's always something that you have, and I've often said that I may not have vision like you do or other people do, but I have a vision for the world. There are two kinds of people. There's a self-serving person, the one who wants to just all about money, and there's a serving person, and I've always been a serving person. And people can tell that. And when people can tell that, they want to learn from you. And so that's how I have become an insider from having been an outsider, because I didn't see like the other people did. So I think this is very good advice for anyone who lets somebody get them down or something.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dr. Joyce, and I really am moved by your story. I think that's a wonderful way of talking about your vision for the world. I mean, that's very, very motivating, very moving.
Well, I think that people need to know. My children have perfect eyesight. Everybody in my family's got perfect eyesight. This wasn't hereditary. This was from a fever as a baby. And that's all I know. I've never done anything else. I see a different way. I use magnifying equipment. I use big fonts on computers. But it's never stopped me from having all the toys, the Kindle, the iPad. It doesn't stop me from having all the toys. The BlackBerry's a little small for me, but I do try everything I can and try to find a way to use it. So I like to tell the story because I like to inspire people, and if I can do it, anybody can.
Yeah, that's certainly true. That's certainly true. I mean, I think that's wonderful. Great advice.
Well, thank you. Well, give me some examples of successful outsiders. I wrote a book called Successful Failures because I was called one.
Oh, really?
Successful Failures. I'll be happy to send you a copy.
Okay,
thank
you.
Successful failures are people that nobody ever thought would be successful, and I was one of those people. So I'd like to know what you are talking about when you say successful outsiders.
So I think it can be, when you talk about celebrities or people like that, Susan Boyle, who was the English woman who has this fabulous voice and came on the stage, looked very dowdy, very kind of like a pop star, and just had this incredible voice, and all the judges on this TV talent show, like American Idol here, were just stunned. And she was definitely an outsider. She had been, I think, unemployed and not really working very well, and became very successful. And the same thing with the writer of Harry Potter, was living in a mobile home, had no money, was really back against the wall when she wrote Harry Potter, now one of the wealthiest women in the world. So that's
right.
So I think
her.
Yeah, and she really went with what she believed in and what her dream was. I think we can be like that. It doesn't, being successful doesn't have to be a multimillionaire. It can just be that you're very content and happy in your life. And I think outsiders who are not celebrities, it's either looking different, So I lived in Japan. I'm 6'2" at the time in the 80s. I was a lot taller than most Japanese.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah, I kept hitting my head on things. That was
or walking on your knees, one of those.
Yeah, that's right. So, looking different, sounding different. So when I'm English, so I have an accent, so people sometimes make fun of that. Acting different, so, if you happen to be Jewish and you're in an office where most people are not Jewish and you're taking off a holiday, you're taking off, the different Jewish holidays, people kind of notice that and can make it a negative if they want to. And then just feeling different. Sometimes you feel like you don't connect with people. Or the last one is, I think, what you were talking about with your turkey. People make you feel different. So they notice something, and for some reason they decide that makes you different. So they're not going to treat you the same way. So any of those 5 factors, I think, can make you an outsider. But I talk about ways of overcoming those, and sometimes it's about humor, sometimes it's about really confronting them, sometimes it's just like you do in kindergarten, being a good sharer, just sharing who you are, and that can overcome some of these barriers.
I agree with that. Well, people can try, but they can't make you different. You are
Exactly.
who you are. So don't you think that it's all about believing in yourself and an attitude that is positive?
Yeah, I think deep down it comes to that, and I think it's a lot about internal work that you do. So I've done a lot of inner work in just understanding why I felt certain ways, and it's also about the outside things. You sometimes have conversations with clients where they say, well, I don't think I can do that. It's really hard. And sometimes we just do practical things. So I'm working with a very successful businesswoman who actually wants to be a writer. So we're looking at her taking a sabbatical for a week and writing. That's not really a huge step. It's taking a week off to do some writing. So she doesn't have to suddenly give up her business and start writing. It's just a small step. So it can be inner work or it can be outer work.
I think that's great advice. I think that's great information for this particular client, because that's what she needs to do to see if she can find her love of writing in that amount of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you definitely have wonderful information, and I've enjoyed talking with you. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can go to my website, which is davidcoupercoach.com, and Couper is spelled with C-O-U-P-E-R. So it's David Couper, C-O-U-P-E-R, coach.com, and they can email me there. You can actually read for free 3 chapters from my book. You can also get great information about job hunting in a recession, all kinds of things there. So that's the easiest way to get hold of me.
Well, that's great. Well, David, I enjoyed speaking with you today. Thank you so much for being our guest today on the ImageMaker Presents.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce.
My pleasure.